The International Association for Near-Death Studies presents NDE Radio, a weekly exploration of near-death experiences and similar encounters with the other side. Now, here's your host, Lee Witting.
Welcome to NDE Radio, brought to you by IANS, the International Association for Near-Death Studies. I'm your host, Lee Witting. Before I introduce our guest today, I want to mention an article that appeared over the weekend in the United Kingdom's The Sun. They reported on November 5th that the idea of human consciousness lives on after death, according to a number of well-respected scientists. The reporter, George Harrison, writes that, quote, the British physicist Sir Roger Penrose is at the forefront of the, and he calls it eerie, theory, claiming that humans have souls which don't die along with the body. We may not know exactly what consciousness is, but Penrose believes, according to this article, that it's just a packet of information stored at a quantum or subatomic level. Sensationally, he claims to have found evidence that this information, which is stored in microtubules within human cells, leaves the body after a person dies. And Harrison goes on to write, Sir Roger has argued that when a person dies temporarily, this quantum information is released into the universe, only to return to the body's cells if the host is brought back to life. He argues that this explains why people can have near-death experiences, and believes that this quantum information amounts to a soul leaving the body. The physics expert said if the patient dies, it's possible that this quantum information can exist outside the body, perhaps indefinitely, as a soul. And the article goes on, and Sir Roger is not alone in believing this, since his theory is backed by researchers at the renowned Max Planck Institute for Physics in Munich. Experts there argue that our physical universe is just a perception, and that once our bodies die, there is an infinite life beyond. And then he mentions a Dr. Hans-Peter Duhr, former head of the institute, who said, what we consider the here and now, this world, is actually just the material level that is incomprehensible. The beyond is an infinite reality that is much bigger. The body dies, but the spiritual quantum field continues. In this way, he wrote, I am immortal. Our guest today, Kathy Clegg, doesn't have to be a quantum physicist to know that our consciousness lives on. As a painter and a muralist, her job has put her in haunted locations where she has had to negotiate with the spirits and residents to get her work done. Kathy, welcome to NDE Radio.
Hi, welcome. I'm glad that I'm here.
Oh, I am too. Kathy, that article from The Sun I just mentioned has a short video where Sir Roger Penrose is saying that somehow our brain is able to translate between math-based quantum reality and what he calls our classical understanding of reality. And a couple of your key indicators from the other side, according to what you told me, come in the form of art imagery and also odors generated by spirits. Two basically nonverbal forms of communication that you've experienced. So I thought maybe if you would, we could begin with a story of how an eagle cloud appeared in one of your murals.
Yes, that was many years ago. I was living in a little rental house, and I was doing a mural for a fella named Dick Gottlieb and his family, and I was in a sunroom, a little porch area, and I had a beautiful sunny day, and at about 2:30 in the afternoon, I had this horrible, sinking, just awful feeling that something very, very sad, very tragic had happened. And, of course, immediately you go to your own family and you think, well, my goodness, something must have happened to my children. And I was painting clouds up over a scene of Sharon, Connecticut, and the scene had a town hall in it. And but I just couldn't let that feeling go. So that evening I called my friend and I said, boy, something awful happened around 2:30 in the afternoon today. I felt it, in my body. I just felt awful. And I almost felt like there was a presence in me that I couldn't explain, and I was trying to tell her that, and she said, well, a very good friend of ours passed away just down the street from where you are. He had been electrocuted he was up on a pole disconnecting the power line, and his son, who was 10 years old, was holding the ladder for him, and he fell off the ladder, and he died right then.
Mm.
And my friend said, well, he died at 2:45, and I said, no, he really died at 2:30, because that's when he died. And I said, but I feel there's something in this mural. So I called another friend of mine, and I said to her, I think there's something in this mural. I had this feeling. So she came over, and she said, Kathy, that whole cloud that's flying over the town hall is an eagle. And I didn't see it until she told me. I honestly did not see it, and it was an eagle in flight with its wing out.
Mm.
And his wife worked at the town hall there. And so I called my friend Judy back, and I said, this is what happened. My friend said it's an eagle, and we talked about it in a while, and she said, do you think we should call his wife? And I said, let's wait a while. Hung up the phone. 2 minutes after we hung up, this wife called my friend Judy and told her, she said, I got a card in the mail, and it was signed Dick Gottlieb. But my mother-in-law got the same card, and it wasn't signed at all. And, just for conversation, I guess. And Judy says, well, Kathy's doing a mural, and this is what happened to her. And, of course, she said immediately that she wanted to come and see it.
Hmm.
She said 2 days before her husband died, he had given their older son an eagle necklace. So the eagle that he painted for his 10-year-old son was to tell him that he was okay and that he had passed on through. So I had them over to see the mural, and the young man was in with the mural. We could not get our cameras to work inside that room. There was so much energy around that little boy. He could take pictures. We could not. We had to literally go outside the room and take it through the window. And I have a few pictures of him with the mural. And I told the man that I was ordering the mural, I said, this happened. If you want, I'll paint a whole new painting for you. He said, oh, no, he was my best friend. So he has the mural. And so it all kind of, one thing fell into another and explained itself as to why he came into me and painted that for his son, was the fact that he wanted that 10-year-old to know that he was okay. So that was one experience that I had. And he, the little boy, was so happy, I think, to know that there was that life after death.
Hmm. Was there any Native American relation to
That's
this?
Right. That's right. The Native Americans believe that the eagle carries the soul off into, into heaven or wherever, whatever your belief is, but that's theirs. And the fact that he had given his older son that eagle necklace 2 days before he died was almost for him a premonition. Maybe that something bad was going to happen, or that he would, want to leave him with that symbol. And then he came into me and left that symbol for his younger son.
Now you were feeling quite ill when he while he was within you painting that cloud. Do you think?
It's a heaviness. You feel heavy. You feel like there's something on your shoulders, and it's almost like you're not yourself. You're just not yourself. And it didn't last very long, but long enough for him to paint that eagle. And but yeah, and every time I've had an entity around me, I get that heavy feeling. It feels like weight. Literally, it feels like weight on your shoulders. And I've had several experiences of that. When I was in Newtown, Connecticut, I had a little girl who used to come to visit me, and I was always outside, and I always felt I could feel that weight on me. And you end up being like a detective, because you have to find out what's going on and why are you feeling this way. And so you really can't ignore anything that's told to you, because these are people that are trying to get in touch with you, and they're trying to get your attention in some way. And so I didn't know anything about that area, so I had to do a lot of detective work to find out who that was and why did I feel that way every time I went outside. I'd be doing gardening, or I'd be stripping furniture, or whatever I was doing. I always had this feeling that this little girl was, or whatever, was next to me. So I found out that there had been a barn on our property right in front of our house, and this little girl had fallen out of the barn, and she was about 11, 12 years old. So I always had this sense that she was just at my shoulder height, and she never tried to touch me or messed with me. But we had a snake that lived in the wall, and it never would come out of the wall. It would sit there and watch me. And I don't know if it sensed her too, but that was always, I had the snake and this little girl anytime I was out in the yard, no matter what I did. And it was just, it was a feeling. So, yeah, that was another.
Did you talk to her?
I didn't talk to her at that time, and again, it's a process of learning. And I talked to some other people, and they had said that you could talk to them and you could actually send them on. And so had I known that information, then I would have done that. I had another experience. It was a barn in Ellsworth, Connecticut, which was part of Sharon, Connecticut. And there was one, I worked in an apple farm. And in the barn upstairs, there was one spot that was always a little bit chilly, and I could sense I had that heavy feeling and a very sad feeling, and I couldn't figure it out. So again, I had to do some detective work, and I found out that the woman that had owned that property had committed suicide in the barn. So I started talking to her, and I found out the whole story about that the neighbors and some of her best friends had said to her that she shouldn't have sold the farm to this particular person, and that he took advantage of her. And anyway, I started to tell her, I said, you did a wonderful thing by selling this property to this man, because he had the money and the means to fix it. And he fixed the barn. The barn was falling apart. It was literally would have split in two if they hadn't braced it and fixed it. And I said, he's made this farm a very famous apple farm. He's taken your apples and made them famous. And we're shipping to people all over the world and out into California. Very famous people were coming to this farm and buying apples from here. And he did that. He has made Ellsworth, put it on the map. And it was called Ellsworth Farm. And we were shipping to very, very famous people out in California, England, all over. And so after I talked to her for a little while, I started to not feel her anymore. I think she was okay with what she did, and she left. I just never felt her after that. So, you can release them. I was told that you can release them if they haven't been gone for very long. But if they've been there for like hundreds of years, you just can't get them. They can't. Sometimes they just get stuck.
They really set in their ways.
Very
being
set in
there.
their ways. Yeah, I had two women that were prostitutes, and they were in what had been a barn that had been turned into a house. and they were stuck. They couldn't leave, but they didn't want a woman in the house after dark because it would have been competition. So I'm painting in this house. Again, I didn't know anything about it, but I could smell these night embers. Okay. So I asked the owner of the house about it, and he said, oh, yes. He says, we have these two sisters that evidently died up in the loft area of the house, and they used to service the men that drove the horses up from New York City. And so, and they died up in that hayloft. And, but they don't know that they're dead. They think they're still waiting for the men to come up. And so they don't want other women in the barn after dark. And he said that at first, they wouldn't let us lock the doors. And so, he said we had a seance and we had to tell them that we were gay and that we had to lock the doors because there were things in the house we didn't want stolen. So they allowed them to lock the doors, but they still don't want to have women in the house after dark. So, so I would be painting on the floor in their basement, which was their master bedroom, bathroom. And the next thing I knew, I smelled night embers. It smelled just like a fireplace. Well, there's no fireplace in this house. So I went outside thinking somebody had started a fire outside. There was no fire going on outside. Come back in the house, I could smell night embers. I could smell the fireplace. So I thought, okay, the girls are telling me something. So I yelled up the stairs, and I said, okay, girls, I'm going home now. And I packed up all my art stuff, and that smell went right away immediately. Huh. So they didn't want me in there after dark.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did you tell the owner? I would just go back to the apple orchard for a minute. Did you ever tell him the story?
I would have spooked him out so bad. No, there's certain times you just can't tell stories like that because you really don't want to. I didn't want to scare anybody, or I didn't want it to become, because it was all very personal between her and I, and I honestly didn't want him to know. Honestly, I didn't want it to become a spectacle, or scare anybody, that worked there. Very often it becomes a very private conversation. I'm in Maine right now, but if I had told that to a lot of people in Sharon, Connecticut, and I was fairly well known because of my art, I didn't want it to become, and the way that the neighbors and the friends had treated her, I just felt that was not a good thing to tell. No? So I didn't tell anybody.
And yet, from his point of view, from the owner's point of view, you convinced the spirit, basically, that what had happened was a good thing, and it's to his credit that he built the business the way he did, and she took comfort in that. And it also, if it were my business, I would certainly incorporate that story into some of the marketing of the apples, because I think people are really fascinated by this sort of thing.
That could have been, but I knew him pretty well, and I'm not sure he would have really appreciated it, for what it was.
And yet the two gay men were quite comfortable, apparently, with the fact that there were two spirits of...
That's right. No, they didn't have a problem at all knowing that there were two women up there.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Now, you also, talking about the smell of smoke, you mentioned to me a Chinese man and the smell of incense?
That was in another house. That was in a house, there was a road close to Torrington, Schoolhouse Lane it was called, and it again was a way house. It was a place where the carriages would stop and they would spend the night there. And there was, I was doing quite a bit of painting on walls and things like that in that house with a decorator. And I had kind of been warned a little bit by her that there was an entity in the house. I felt him when I went in, and when I started to paint, it was very obvious that he had a strong presence there, and he was not nice. He was not a nice person, and he was angry, probably because he died, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And he didn't want the paint over the doorway. There was the energy that came from that room. He was upstairs in an upstairs bedroom, and the energy that came down, I couldn't get the paint to stick on the wall at all in that one section. And I was doing like vine work, hand-painted vine work, all around the room. So I had a really hard time. I had to mix varnish with it in order to get it to even stick a little bit and make it more muted than I normally would. But he really gave us. And then towards when it started to get nighttime, it was like he wanted us out. He did not want us in that house, and we could smell incense. And I said to the gal that I was with, I would not go in this house alone ever. After she told me that, you know, about him, I just would not be there alone. And so I said, he's telling us to get out. And so we yelled up the stairs again, you know, and talked to him and said, we're leaving, we're going, you can knock it off or whatever. And we got out of there. And just after I told him that we were packing up and going, then the incense smell went away. So they do have other ways of letting you know that they're around. That you know, that energy happened again to me. I was up living in New Hampshire, and I was doing a mural in a house called, it was brand new house, called David's house. It was a house for children that have cancer. It's like a Ronald McDonald house. I was doing a 30-foot mural there, and it was the first day that I was working on this mural, and I went in, and because of that experience that I had in Connecticut, I knew that there was something happening. So I started painting, and the paint again would not stick on the wall, and I didn't know why, but I knew somebody was trying to get my attention, and I said in a loud voice, "Okay, I'm going home now," and I packed everything up, and I went back to my house, and the phone had the answering machine was, you know, the light, how it flicks.
Yes.
There was a message, and the message was that one of my dear friends had died, and she wanted me to go home and know that she had passed away. So she had found me, and she didn't want me to paint. She wanted me to go home and get that message. And so, it's an odd thing to happen. I went back the next day and started to paint, and the paint stuck on the wall. I had no trouble painting at all. So it wasn't an entity that was living there. It was an entity that found me. And she found me to tell me that she had died. So,
yes.
Yeah, and it's you know, it comes in all different ways, you know.
I wonder how they would keep paint from sticking. You know, there's that talk about ectoplasm or something like that. Maybe there's some material that they put between the paint and the wall that caused it to.
It's real. I've had it happen twice, and you know, but that because there's so much energy in and around me, I guess, that it just it just won't stick. It just won't stick to the wall. So yeah, it's an interesting thing. Another one was I was doing it was in a basement. It was she was quite famous person, and it was her child's bedroom, and I was doing ABCs, stenciling all the way around the room, and I was there for probably a week and a half every day, and every time that this one window, I could see a man go looking into the windows. And then he would just, you know, disappear. And I never found out who he was. I didn't want to ask the people that owned the house the history because I didn't want to alarm them. I never went back and really did the research on that one to find out who he was. but there definitely was somebody outside that window, and he watched me the whole time I was in that room. So, but I should have done the sleuth on that. But people that have those feelings, it's really important to go and find out the history of where you are in the house. And even if you're in the woods, we were talking today, somebody said, oh, well, there's no ghosts in the woods, but there are ghosts in the woods. Because you don't know, there could have been a battle there, there's all kinds of, so if you have feelings that you're outside, like that little girl, she wasn't haunting, she was just curious as to watching me, as to what I was doing, and I think wanting to be near a woman and near an adult, and so it's sad, it's very sad, I think, in many ways, that people are kind of stuck there.
Do you think they're attracted to you in particular because you're sensitive to them, that they know that you know that they're there? Absolutely.
My daughter Lisa has the same basic abilities that I have. I've never really pursued knowing any more than what I know. They seem to know that I'm open, and she's the same way. She'll be in a restaurant, and it in Boston, where it maybe had been a prison at one point, and then they turned it into a bistro. And these entities just drive her crazy to the point that she has to leave because they want to talk to her, they want to tell her, and she sees a lot of them, and so she actually sees these people, and so it gets so crowded that she just says, I can't eat, I have to leave here.
Wow.
So she's done that a few times. Hospitals are another place that she has a real hard time in, and so yeah.
Have you ever done any art related to the other side?
No. The only art that I have done was through my own experiences. Not so much having to do with death, but in a way it has to do with death. I went through breast cancer, and when I did, I've had cancer 3 times, and I had breast cancer twice. And the last time I did it, I was in all these machines, and I kept thinking about breasts, and I thought, well, there's all these images out there for breasts. I mean, there's a million images. There's Lake Titicaca, there's Grand Tetons, there's, all of these, robin redbreast. There's 1,000 birds that have names that have to do with breasts. So I did a mural, all with these images in it. And it was more because it's such a morose and sad time for most women and men. But you get lost in that, and if you can laugh at a time that's not so funny, it's healing, very, very healing. So this,
yes,
on every single image, I wrote underneath what it was, so that you didn't need a key to see it. You just had to walk up to it and read it, and it would make you laugh. And it is in the first breast clinic in the United States, in the waiting room of the surgical department, which is probably the saddest place in the world. Okay, and the people there are told, and then they can go out there and get some relief.
Yes. Something to smile about.
That's right. And all of the plant material in the mural is the cure for cancer. The yew tree, the periwinkle, all the things they use in chemo. And the birds are sitting on it. And the whole thing is about breast and for breast and for the healing of people.
Well, Kathy, unfortunately, we are right out of time. But I want to thank you for sharing some of your stories of your encounters with the other side. For the listeners, if they'd like to listen again to this or any of our past shows, just go to our website at nderadio.org. And tune in next Monday, 11 a.m. Eastern, for more NDE Radio. This is Lee Witting saying thank you, Kathy, and thanks to the listeners.